Hi Reddit, I'm 32F and have been married to my husband Ryan, 34M, for almost 7 years now. We have a nice life, modest, nothing fancy, but stable. We bought a home just outside of town about 3 years ago with a little guest house in the backyard, which we mostly used for storage and occasional visitors. That's where this story begins. My younger sister, Claire, 29, had just gone through a nasty divorce. Her ex cheated, ran off with some girl he met at a bar, and left Claire to deal with the fallout. I felt terrible for her. She had to move out of their shared apartment and bounce around between friends' places. I wanted to help. So I did what any decent sister would, I offered her the guest house. Ryan was fine with it. Or at least he said he was. The first couple weeks went fine. Claire was quiet, helpful, even grateful. She'd cook dinner for us sometimes, help with the yard, and occasionally babysit our dog when we had errands. I thought things were going smoothly. But then, little things started happening. And when I say little, I mean things that you almost talk yourself out of noticing. Like how Claire would be lounging in my robe after borrowing our shower because her water heater needed fixing. Or how she always seemed to be in the kitchen when Ryan got home from work, like she knew exactly when he'd arrive. She'd giggle too much, compliment him a little too often, and always be around when I wasn't. I tried not to think anything of it. I really did. But one night, I came home late from a work event. Ryan didn't know I was getting back early. As I came up the driveway, I noticed the lights were still on in the living room. The curtains weren't fully closed, so I stopped, just for a second, to peek through the window before heading in. And that's when I saw Claire. On the couch. Sitting way too close to Ryan. Laughing at something on his phone, hand resting on his arm like she owned it. Ryan didn't look uncomfortable. In fact, he looked happy. Relaxed, like that was their normal. I stood frozen in the dark, heart pounding, unsure of what to think. I waited outside for a few minutes, then made some noise with the car door so they'd hear me before I walked in. By the time I entered, Claire had backed away. Ryan was sitting up straighter. The TV was on, but no one was watching it. They didn't say anything weird. Just acted like everything was fine. But now, I know something's off. And I'm scared to find out what's next. The next morning, I woke up feeling uneasy. I couldn't shake the image of Claire resting her hand on Ryan's arm like it belonged there. I kept trying to rationalize it. They're close because we're all close, right? Maybe it was just an innocent moment and I caught it at the wrong time. Maybe I'm being paranoid. But once that seed is planted, it grows. I started watching them. Not obviously, just quietly, from the corners of the room. And what I noticed made me feel crazy. Ryan started dressing a little nicer on weekends. Usually, he'd wear old sweats and whatever t-shirt he could find, but now? Collared shirts. He even started wearing cologne to do yard work. And Claire? She was always there. Always around. Suddenly she was in the main house more than the guest house. She'd forget her phone in the kitchen, borrow ingredients from our pantry, or say she needed help with her TV and could Ryan come check it out? The worst part? Ryan never complained. He never told her to stop. If anything, he seemed amused by it. Flattered. I decided to test something. I told Ryan I was going to visit my mom for the weekend, spur of the moment. I said she wasn't feeling well and I wanted to check in. He looked a little surprised, but he didn't argue. He just said, "Tell her I said hi." But I didn't go to my mom's. I drove to a friend's place across town and stayed there. She knew the whole story. We even parked my car in her garage so no one would know I was nearby. That night, around 8 p.m., I checked our home security app. We have a doorbell camera and a couple outdoor cams for the backyard and driveway. Nothing fancy, just enough to see comings and goings. At 8:34 p.m., Claire walked out of the guest house in a short robe and fuzzy slippers, holding 2 wine glasses. At 8:36 p.m., she knocked on our back door. Ryan let her in. The camera caught him smiling. My stomach dropped. I kept watching. I couldn't hear them, but I watched them in the kitchen. Claire poured wine. Ryan leaned on the counter. She laughed, too loud, too freely. He wasn't pulling away. He was leaning in. I watched the video 5 times. Then I shut off my phone and stared at the wall. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe that she'd wave goodnight and head back out. Maybe that he'd shut the door and lock it behind her. But that didn't happen. At 10:02 p.m., the kitchen lights went off. And no one left the house. She didn't go back to the guest house. She stayed. And I didn't sleep a single second that night. The next morning, I woke up in a fog. It was like my body had gone on autopilot but my brain hadn't caught up. I sat in my friend's kitchen staring at a cup of coffee I hadn't touched, while my phone sat on the counter next to me like a loaded weapon. I hadn't checked the cameras again. I couldn't. I kept replaying that final moment, 10:02 p.m., the lights going out, and Claire still inside the house. I didn't need to see more. I already knew. But part of me wanted proof. Not just for me, but for what I might have to do next. I waited until noon. Then I called Ryan. I kept my voice steady and told him I'd decided to stay with my mom for another night. He didn't ask why. Just said okay, and that he'd see me soon. No, I miss you. No, how's your mom? Just, okay. After I hung up, I opened the camera app again and scanned through the motion alerts from the night before. At 1:43 a.m., Claire walked out of the house, barefoot, carrying her heels. She looked smug. Tired, but smug. She walked back to the guest house and didn't come out again until almost 10 the next morning. She was in leggings and one of Ryan's old college sweatshirts. The same one I used to wear on rainy days. I showed the footage to my friend. She didn't say anything at first. Just shook her head slowly like she was still processing what we were looking at. Then she said it. That's not your sister anymore. It hit me in the chest. Hard. I stayed one more night, but I couldn't sit still. I kept pacing, kept checking the camera feed. Claire acted like she lived there now. She walked the dog. Brought in the mail. Ryan came home with takeout and gave her my portion. She laughed at something, touched his arm again. It was all so easy for them. By the third day, I knew what I had to do. I packed my bags, left my friend's place, and drove straight home. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't give either of them a heads up. I wanted to see their faces. When I pulled into the driveway, Claire was outside watering my hydrangeas like she lived there. She froze when she saw my car. Ryan came out onto the porch a second later. And the look on his face? Guilt. Not surprise. Not panic. Just guilt. Like he knew this moment was coming and had already resigned himself to it. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I walked past both of them, into my house, and shut the door behind me. My hands were shaking. My next move? That's what I'm figuring out now. I didn't speak to either of them that night. I couldn't. I locked myself in the bedroom, turned off the lights, and just sat there on the floor, staring at the closet door like it held answers. My head was spinning, my chest felt tight, and even though I was in my own home, it felt unfamiliar, like I was intruding on someone else's life. Claire didn't knock. Ryan didn't call out. The silence was louder than any shouting could have been. I laid awake all night, listening for movement. The faint clink of dishes. Footsteps in the hallway. At one point, around 2 a.m., I heard the soft creak of the guest house door closing. Someone had gone outside, barefoot by the sound of it. By morning, I had made my decision. If they wanted to treat this house like theirs, then I was going to treat them like strangers. I got up early and made coffee, loud enough for them to hear. I moved deliberately, slamming a few cabinet doors, letting them know I was there. Present. Not going anywhere. Claire slinked into the kitchen first. She looked like she hadn't slept, but she still had on makeup. Lip gloss. One of those silk camisoles that wasn't quite casual, wasn't quite lingerie. She opened the fridge like I wasn't standing right there. I didn't even look at her. Then Ryan walked in. He tried to act normal. Said good morning like nothing was wrong. Like this was just a regular Thursday and not the day I planned to detonate everything. I didn't answer. I picked up my mug, walked past both of them, and went outside to the backyard. That's where I made the call. My cousin's a lawyer. We aren't close, but close enough for me to be honest. I told her everything. I didn't need divorce papers yet. I just wanted to know my options. The house was in both our names, but the guest house? It was technically listed as recreational property, added after purchase with my inheritance from my grandmother. That detail mattered. A lot. She told me something else too. Something I hadn't thought about. If I suspected an affair, and had proof they were living together under my roof while I was away, I could have them both removed, for now, at least. And if I played it right, I might be able to get a temporary order locking them out while I sorted out my next steps. That lit a spark in me I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't powerless. They thought I was some naive wife who wouldn't fight back. They thought I'd cry, scream, maybe beg. But I wasn't doing any of that. I was going to make them squirm. That night, I went out to dinner alone. Took my time. Came back around 9 p.m. When I walked into the house, I heard their laughter upstairs. Claire's laugh. Ryan's voice. I didn't say a word. Just smiled to myself. Because what they didn't know? I'd already changed the locks on the guest house. And tomorrow morning, they were both going to wake up to a notice taped to the front door. Time's up. By 7 a.m. the next morning, the notice was taped to the guest house door. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no scene. Just a formal letter from my cousin's law office, a legal notification that the guest house was no longer available for temporary occupancy, effective immediately. It was worded perfectly. Cold. Professional. Unshakable. I sat on the porch with a coffee in hand, waiting. Claire came out first. She looked like she hadn't even brushed her hair, wearing Ryan's hoodie, squinting at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. She read it once. Then twice. Her mouth dropped open, and I swear for a second, she actually laughed, like it was a joke. Then Ryan came out behind her. He looked at the notice. Then at me. His expression didn't change, but I saw it in his eyes, his panic. He didn't say a word. He just rubbed the back of his neck and went back inside the main house. Claire stormed across the yard toward me. She didn't even pretend to be nice this time. Her voice was sharp, louder than it needed to be. She wanted to know what the hell this was, how I could do this to her, how I could be so cold after everything she was going through. I just sipped my coffee and said, "This is my home. You're a guest. And your stay is over." She looked stunned. Like the idea of consequences had never crossed her mind. Like I was the villain in her story. That's when Ryan came out again, car keys in hand, and told her they'd talk about it later. Told her to go back inside. She refused. Said she wasn't going anywhere until he backed her up. And then something happened that I wasn't expecting. He didn't say a word in her defense. Instead, he turned to me and asked if we could talk. Alone. I almost laughed, but I nodded. We went inside while Claire stayed fuming on the porch. He followed me into the kitchen, looking smaller somehow. Like the man I'd married had folded into someone I barely recognized. He started with a sigh. The kind people use when they're about to make excuses. He didn't deny anything. Didn't try to lie. He just said he was confused. Said he hadn't meant for any of this to happen. That Claire was vulnerable. That he was lonely. He never used the word affair. Never said betrayal. Just soft little words designed to make everything seem less than it was. I let him talk. And then I told him the truth. I told him I'd seen them on the camera. That I knew she stayed the night. That I saw everything. His face turned pale. The words died in his throat. I told him I wasn't deciding anything today, but if he didn't get her out of that house by tonight, I was calling the sheriff and having her removed. Then I walked upstairs and shut the bedroom door behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, feeling strangely calm. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one being blindsided. They were. I didn't see Claire again for the rest of the day. Not in the kitchen, not in the yard, not wandering barefoot into my house like she owned the air inside it. The only sign she was still around was the slam of the guest house door around 2 p.m., loud and angry, like she wanted me to know she was still mad. Good. Ryan stayed quiet too. He didn't try to talk again. He made himself small, stuck to the basement where he usually cleared his head whenever we fought, which, looking back, had become more frequent than I wanted to admit. At one point, I heard him on the phone. His voice low, pacing, frustrated. I couldn't make out the words, but it didn't matter. He was unraveling. I could feel it. By evening, I checked the cameras again. Claire still hadn't moved any of her things out of the guest house. No suitcase. No boxes. Nothing. So I waited. I didn't go over there. I didn't remind her. I wanted to see what she'd do when time was up. At exactly 9 p.m., I heard shouting. Not from Ryan. From Claire. She burst into the house without knocking, without even pausing, screaming my name like I'd committed some unspeakable betrayal. She accused me of turning Ryan against her, of poisoning everything just because I was too insecure to handle real competition. Competition. That word. I didn't say a thing. Just stood by the stairs and let her throw her tantrum. Then she went nuclear. She said, loud and clear, that she and Ryan had been connecting emotionally for months. That he'd come to her first. That it wasn't her fault if he had feelings he couldn't control. And Ryan? He came out of the basement halfway through her monologue, eyes wide, as if he was hearing it all for the first time. That's when I realized something. She thought they were a couple. Like, really thought they were a couple. She looked at him, waiting for him to say something. To confirm it. To back her up. And he didn't. He just stood there, frozen. Like a deer in headlights, caught between two people and too cowardly to pick a side. That silence broke her. Claire's voice cracked. She looked from me to him, then back again. And I saw it. That flicker of realization. She had no place here. No relationship. No backup. And no control. She spun on her heel and stormed outside. This time, I didn't watch through the cameras. I didn't need to. Because when the Uber pulled up 20 minutes later, I heard the trunk slam and then, nothing. No goodbye. No second act. Just the sound of a door closing and my sister disappearing into the night. Ryan didn't follow her. He didn't speak. He just stood in the living room, staring at the space where she used to be. And I stood on the stairs, arms crossed, wondering if he finally understood what he'd just lost. Not her. Me. Ryan didn't say a word that night. Not when the Uber pulled away. Not when the guest house lights finally went dark. Not when I walked past him to go upstairs without looking back. He just sat there, sinking into the couch like it might swallow him whole. The next morning, I woke up early. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, but my body was buzzing. I was done tiptoeing. I needed answers, and this time, I wasn't waiting for him to offer them. I went downstairs, expecting him to be asleep or gone. But there he was. Same couch. Same clothes. Same blank stare. He looked at me like a man who just realized he lit a match in a house full of gasoline. He asked if we could talk. And I let him. He told me he didn't cheat. Not physically, anyway. He said he and Claire had crossed lines, had confusing feelings, but nothing happened. That it was never supposed to go that far. He said it started with venting. With late-night talks. That she just got him, in a way I hadn't lately. That sentence? It nearly made me laugh. She got him? Of course she did. She knew exactly which cracks to step on. Which versions of our life to mirror. She was my sister. She knew the shape of my marriage better than anyone else. He said he wanted to fix things. He said he was willing to do the work. I just stood there, watching him spiral. He was desperate, but not in love. He wanted safety. Familiarity. The thing he thought I could still be if he just said the right combination of words. But here's the thing. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the choice. When I asked him, twice, to draw the line and protect our marriage, he didn't. When I said I was uncomfortable, he let her stay. When I left the house, he let her take my place on the couch. In the kitchen. In the quiet moments that used to belong to us. And now he wanted forgiveness? No. What he wanted was a reset. And I wasn't handing him one. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just looked him in the eye and said, start packing. He tried to argue. Said the house was half his. That we should pause and talk things through. But I wasn't bluffing. My cousin had already sent the paperwork. And as much as he hated legalese, the truth was simple. He could leave with his things. Or with a court order. His call. He sat there in silence for what felt like an hour before finally getting up. He packed 2 bags and stood at the front door, waiting for me to say something, anything, to stop him. I didn't. He walked out. And just like that, I was alone. But for the first time in weeks, the air in the house didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. It felt like mine again. It's strange how quiet a house can feel after someone leaves. You'd think the absence would be a relief, and in a way, it was, but the silence had a weight to it. A reminder that even though the chaos was gone, the damage was still sitting in the corners, quiet and invisible like smoke after a fire. Ryan was gone. Claire was gone. But my mind wasn't done racing. I kept waiting for the next thing to fall apart. Like betrayal had momentum, and even though the storm had passed, the aftershocks were still working their way through my life. And then the next one hit. 2 days later, I got a call from my bank. Someone had attempted to access one of our joint accounts from an unfamiliar IP address. Normally, that wouldn't raise flags, except that the request came with a password reset, followed by a failed security question. And the name attached to the request? Claire. I felt my stomach turn. We'd set up that account years ago, originally for savings, then for house projects. Ryan and I hadn't used it much lately, but it still held several $1,000s. I hadn't touched it since before Claire moved in. I wasn't even sure she knew it existed. But apparently, she did. The bank flagged the attempt as suspicious and froze the account until I could verify everything. I thanked the rep, hung up, and just sat there for a while, trying to make sense of it. Claire was gone. Out of the house. Out of my life. What was she doing sniffing around our finances? Then it clicked. Ryan. He must have mentioned the account to her. Maybe while venting. Maybe while planning. Maybe during one of those emotional bonding sessions he swore were harmless. Whatever it was, she took that information and tried to turn it into something real. Money. I opened my messages. Claire's number was still blocked, but I checked her socials anyway. And there it was. A cryptic post from the night before. Some people don't appreciate what you do for them until you're gone. But that's fine. I always land on my feet. The caption was under a photo of her in a hotel room, glass of wine in hand, legs crossed, smirking at the camera like she was about to inherit the world. But what really caught my eye was the bathrobe. Hotel branded. And familiar. Because it was from the same chain Ryan used to book whenever we needed a night away. I knew he'd given her the login to our travel account. Probably months ago. Probably just to help her find a place when she left her ex. Now she was using it like it belonged to her. I was furious, but it wasn't the kind of rage that makes you scream. It was the kind that hardens you. Claire hadn't just tried to steal my husband. She was trying to steal my life, piece by piece. My home. My comfort. My money. My peace. And she wasn't finished yet. But neither was I. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not anymore. For weeks, I'd been the one quietly piecing things together while they played house in my home. I kept my mouth shut when Claire slithered into the kitchen in my clothes. I swallowed my pride when Ryan looked me in the eye and chose silence. I waited, and watched, and gave them more than enough rope. Now it was time to see what they'd do with it. First thing I did was call my cousin, the lawyer, and forward her every screenshot I had. The Guesthouse notice, Claire's post in the hotel robe, the flagged bank activity, even the time-stamped doorbell cam of Claire accidentally walking in on Ryan shirtless one morning. Every little detail. She didn't even blink. Said we had more than enough to file a protective order for financial interference. Civil court, maybe. Nothing that would land Claire in jail, but enough to cause real headaches. Then I logged into the travel account and changed every password. I cancelled every pending reservation. I messaged the hotel Claire was staying at, claimed the card had been stolen, and flagged it with fraud protection. They froze her room instantly. Petty? Maybe. But necessary. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about control. I'd been playing defense for too long. By that afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. No name. Just a message. Really? You're gonna leave me stranded like this? Claire. I blocked it without responding. She sent another from a different number. Then another. Each one angrier than the last. But she made a mistake with the fifth one. She left a voicemail. And in that voicemail, she said something she didn't mean to. You're just bitter because Ryan still talks to me and not you. That was all I needed to hear. Ryan had been quiet since he left. I hadn't reached out. He hadn't either, at least, not to me. But Claire was claiming they were still in contact. So I checked. I logged into our old shared cell phone plan. His number was still attached. And there it was. Calls, texts, late night, early morning, short bursts, long ones. Every day since he left, sometimes multiple times a day. And just like that, the last little bit of doubt inside me vanished. It hadn't ended when she left the house. He hadn't chosen me when she stormed off. He'd just gone back to hiding it better. I wasn't even angry at that point. Just done. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a mess with two people who needed each other more than they ever needed me. So I cleaned house. I had the locks changed. I scrubbed the guest house from top to bottom, boxed up everything she left behind, and dropped it off at her mother's place with a printed copy of the notice. I even left a sticky note. You wanted space. Here it is. I filed paperwork to remove Ryan's name from every shared account. The utilities. The streaming services. The storage unit. Gone. Clean cuts. I lit a candle that night. Not for some dramatic symbol, just because the house finally smelled like me again. No borrowed perfume. No stress sweat. No lies. Just quiet. Just peace. A week passed. It was the quietest week I'd had in months. No calls from Claire. No texts from Ryan. Just stillness, like the universe had finally stopped spinning in the wrong direction. I was healing. Slowly. Deliberately. Reclaiming little things. I started eating at the dining table again. I opened the windows in the morning. I slept without that tightness in my chest. Every day, I felt more like me again. Until the envelope came. It wasn't fancy. No lawyer's seal, no threatening font, just plain white, addressed to me in handwriting I recognized instantly. Ryan's. I sat on the porch and stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Inside was a letter. 3 pages. No return address. No closure, either. Just a mess of thoughts, scribbled out in his rushed, uneven handwriting. He said he wasn't trying to win me back. Said he didn't expect forgiveness. But what he did want was honesty. For the first time since everything blew up, he admitted what I already knew. He'd been emotionally cheating long before Claire ever stepped foot in our house. It started when he felt unseen, like our lives had turned into routines. He said Claire filled a space he didn't know he'd left empty. Said she listened differently, made him feel younger, freer. But what he didn't expect was for her to become obsessed. According to him, it spiraled. Fast. She started digging into our finances behind his back, found old documents, started asking what I was worth, what he was entitled to. She joked about how everything would be easier once I was out of the way. At first, he said he laughed it off. Then he stopped laughing. He said the night I left, when I caught them on the couch, she told him I'd never come back, that I was too proud, too weak. And that's when he realized something. She wasn't playing house. She was replacing me. He claimed he never touched her. That he wanted to tell me everything but didn't know how. That by the time he realized what she was doing, it was too late, and he was too deep in the lie to claw his way out. I don't know if I believe him. Part of me does. But not enough to matter. At the end of the letter, he wrote one last line that stayed with me. You didn't lose a sister. You shed a snake. I just wish I hadn't waited until it wrapped around both of us. I folded the letter once and put it away in a drawer I rarely open. It didn't fix anything. It didn't undo the months I spent doubting my own instincts, watching the two people closest to me treat my life like a stage for their drama. But it gave me something I hadn't had until now. The truth. And I can live with that. I've since filed for divorce. Ryan hasn't contested it. Claire hasn't reached out again, not directly. But I know she saw the letter. Ryan's handwriting was too neat, too filtered. He didn't write it alone. But I don't care. They both belong to the past now. This morning, I bought paint for the guest house. New curtains. A new key. It's going to be a reading space. Quiet, safe, just for me. And as I locked it up tonight, I realized something. Sometimes the people you trust most don't betray you because they stop loving you. They betray you because they never respected you to begin with. And when you finally walk away, that's when they realize what they lost. Too late.